Welcome to another episode of the Hospitality Mentor Podcast. And today I'm very excited to have Executive Chef Rebecca Tillman of the Ritz Carlton Bacara. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, Chef, I'm excited to have you here because I love having chefs on the show. You guys always have such a wealth of knowledge. But I want to start with, what was your very first job in hospitality?
So it was not very exciting, but my very first job, introduction to hospitality, was working at a restaurant ice cream shop called Swenson's, which is, if anyone that lives on the West Coast, started in San Francisco. So although I was living in Arizona at the time, really by default, to get a license, to be able to have some freedom, I needed a job. And, I'm like, I can work there. I can scoop some ice cream. Little did I know that that would kind of lead to sort of the rest of my life, not knowing. But yeah, scooping ice cream and making ice cream was the start to all of this.
It's amazing. So, you're the second person on the podcast that's worked there. That was their first job.
Really?
We had another chef, a pastry chef, Chef Norman Love.
Yes, actually, I know that. I knew that story. Well, I didn't become a pastry chef probably because of that. But yeah, and I just don't eat a lot of ice cream now because of that. So it was, my high school years of making ice cream and scooping ice cream. But I fell in love with just, everything that restaurants had, and just it became very fascinating to me. So
what was that like in high school, right? Because in high school, you said you're 16, 17, 18 doing that, and you're with adults that are in the kitchen. And what was that experience like for you? Because I remember the first time I walked in, I'm like, whoa, they're using like bad words all the time, and it's a little crazy in here. What was it like for you?
Yeah, I think because a lot of my friends had worked there, and it was, it was more, I saw it more as fun than I did anything else. And pretty quickly, the owner of that particular store, kind of saw something in me that was maybe a little bit different. So, I started working more as a leader. Eventually when I was my senior year, I was closing down the restaurant, doing this sort of managerial things, even though maybe I wasn't supposed to based on age, but, it was okay back then. But, that really, it was exciting, it was different. It wasn't just like I went to a job and, I really loved being there, and I liked working there. I liked everything about it. I mean, I remember scrubbing the tile. Who would put white grout with black tile in a restaurant? But every day we would hand scrub tile just because the grout was white. But things like that, where at the time it probably wasn't fun, but it makes you appreciate things, and it makes you understand detail. And at the time, again, I probably didn't see that, but I'll always remember that, and someone paying attention. Swenson's, right?
I love it. That's just,
I know.
We had one in Miami for a little bit, so I always liked going there when I was.
Yeah.
So you were doing that in high school, and I guess you must have liked it because you decided to go to Northern Arizona University for hotel, motel, and restaurant management, correct?
I did, yeah. So I actually went to Northern Arizona. I played sports, but also just sort of knew that that's the direction I wanted to go. So worked in a restaurant, for about 3.5 years. And then, they had a great program at the time. I think it was Northern Arizona, UNLV, and maybe Cornell had, this is the late 90s, so had hospitality programs. So, decided to go there. And, really it was more about, rooms and housekeeping and business. And so less even about culinary or food and beverage. I mean, we had a little small hotel on property. It was called the Inn at NAU. And there was a chef there that was working in the restaurant. And one of our labs was to work in the kitchen. And I had always been really fascinated with kitchens and, thought, well, it's cooking at home and things. And pretty immediately he saw that I really liked it. And I volunteered and wanted to always I was like a sponge. And so I had a conversation with him of, I'm going to stay in school. I'm going to finish my degree, but this is I don't want to be a rooms director. No offense to rooms director. I don't want to, I just didn't see that for myself. I didn't want to be in housekeeping. We did housekeeping labs, and I'm like, I'm done with housekeeping.
Like, oh my gosh, get me out of here.
Right. So, he kind of took me under his wing a bit and was like, well, if this is what you want to do, then you should pursue that. You should do that. And you should go to culinary school and, stay in school, get your bachelor's degree, learn what you can from a business perspective, and then, but you should go to culinary school. And so I just stayed working at the Inn at NAU with him. And I mean, I kind of had a little mini sort of apprenticeship program, I guess, with him, because he really definitely took me under his wing and gave me some knowledge that maybe the rest of the students weren't getting, which I really apprecited. But
that's very cool. So what sports were you playing when there? I'm curious.
Cross country. I ran cross
country runner.
Yeah.
You got the stamina. I tried that for a little bit in high school. That was rough.
Yeah, it was rough. So
I'm like to see you're on the team there. So I'm going to ask something about that later on.
Okay.
So, all right. So you go to culinary school, you decide to do that. Is that looking back now? Because was that something you would do again? Because I know that sometimes the cost of going.
Yeah. And I think it was maybe different when I went, it was almost expected you would go, if you wanted to be a chef, that's the route you took. And there was lots of different programs. And, I decided I wanted to stay in the Phoenix area. My friends and family were there. And I knew that there was opportunity within that area. So I went to the Art Institute of Phoenix. I was in their first graduating class. So it was very small, I had 5 students, I think, in my class. And so, again, it was probably more hands-on than most would have gotten. I mean, we really had a very intense, and I only went there a year because I had taken all my hospitality classes. So it's really just a year focused solely on culinary, where everyone else was still taking English and math. And, I got to really have a condensed, experience. So, which I think was very helpful, because I saw that, working at a faster speed and kind of absorbing all of that quickly was important. So yeah, I mean, it was super valuable. We had 2 master chefs at the school, everyone that was working there currently had just come from the industry. So it was really hands-on, where I think sometimes there's a disconnect in some culinary schools where they may have tried it for a little bit and then decided to teach, or hadn't, been in the industry for a very long time, which there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I needed that, top line sort of experience from a master chef perspective. And then someone who is fresh out of the industry that can give you that more, real time experience. So I think I had a little bit of a magic moment going to school when I did and where I did, because it was new. And so it was exciting, and we kind of figured it out as we went along. So.
No, it's great. And you had, like you said, a small class, so you got to really be hands-on with these master chefs. Is a huge difference.
Huge.
And this is really before like the boom of the Food Network and all the celebrity chefs, right? So this is like the real, you wanted to be in this kitchen, because you weren't looking at, these celebrities on TV. This is something you enjoyed.
Yeah. And there wasn't really any sort of, from a culinary perspective, anyone to look up to, you know what I mean? It was like on TV anyway, it was just actual chefs and restaurants. And so, which I think is, for me was super important, because I didn't have, a preconceived notion of, I just knew that it took a lot of work. Right. Yep. And so.
And it's hard. So you get out there, you're in the real world now, right? So you just, your first job is where do you decide to go?
The Arizona Biltmore.
Beautiful place. So you jump right into luxury hotel right off the bat.
Jumped right into luxury. So I remember sending a fax to the executive chef, because I said, I want to work the best property at the time that was in the area. So I sent a fax to him that said, I'm going to work there. You're going to hire me. In retrospect, it was a big leap, but I did it. And he called me and said, I got your fax. I'm interested to talk to you. So yeah, I mean, that's how it started. It was, a little unconventional, but I wanted to learn everything I could, and knew going to a resort would have given me, something where I could learn multiple facets, multiple restaurants, multiple things without having to leave. Where I think as young culinarians going in now often make that mistake of, they'll go to a restaurant that's really fun and cool, but there's a ceiling there and they're only going to learn so much. So then they go to the next fun and cool place. And so they're on their resume, they just are, constantly moving from place to place to place, where, I figured it out pretty quickly that a resort has all those things. And, you sort of just keep building and building and building that, sort of toolbox, if you will, of knowledge, versus, having to start a job, stop a job, all those things that just take time, and there's some risk in that, right? So,
so true.
Yeah, I mean, my very first day I started in banquets, and I picked the stems off of 40 cases of spinach. That was my very first day. I think
Yeah,
they did it as a
yeah,
test, and
you passed.
I passed. My fingers were very green. They just ended up sautéing it, and but I understood that that's what the job was going to be. It was, practice, 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 and it was never going to be the fun jobs. But it's okay. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
wanted
got
to,
I
I
got
wanted to
hazed like
prove.
that too. I think because I
Yeah.
was front of house,
Hmm.
and there was a moment when I was at the Lowe's Miami Beach Hotel, and we had the wine and food festival going on there, and so all like
Hmm.
this, it was like 2007, 8 when like the celebrities started coming, like Emerald and Rachel
Yeah.
Ray and
Yeah.
all of the. Oh, I'm gonna be like them. So I asked the chef, like, can I just come in on a day off and like start learning how to cook? And I think I did that for a month, and then I was like, I'm never coming back. They put me just to do little things like you said for like days on end of like chopping tomatoes and
Yes.
chopping vegetables and chopping fruit, and then all right, you're gonna stand on the grill for 8 hours and just
Yeah.
turn these pieces of chicken, hundreds of them. I was like, I'm good. I'm going back to the front of house. I can't hack this back here.
Yeah, I remember my like second or third day, one of the cooks that had been there a while, he came up and he said, the fastest way for you to not have to do this is to keep doing what you're doing and to get through it fast. I
Mm-hmm.
said, in my head, I was like, yeah, he's right. The more that if I didn't want to, I would never complain about it. I
Mm-hmm.
knew the work was the work, but the more that I could show them that, you can throw something at me and I'm just going to keep, I'm going to push through and keep doing the easier it sort of got. The jobs became a little more interesting. It was less about, what her breaking point is and more about, wow, she actually can just keep doing it. So, I kind of figured that out pretty quickly that,
Yeah. So as you're doing that, because you're there 6 years, do you
I
start
was there
raising
six
your hand
years
up for like, hey, opportunities? Like, hey, chef, I want to do this. I want to
for
do the next
sure.
role. Can you move me to this space? Like, how
For
was that?
sure. So I've always been someone who, if I saw something or I needed something, I always knew to speak up. So I kind of was raised that way, where you can't just be quiet in the corner waiting for someone to, come to you. So if I saw an opportunity, if I saw a position, if I saw a thing I wanted to learn or see, I would ask, when can I do that? And it became, well, whenever they could show me or guide me or move me to a different area, I took it as an opportunity to learn. And I knew that the more I would learn, obviously the better skill set I would have, but the more opportunity I would have and the more exposure I would have. So
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes that's a risk, or not a risk, but I think sometimes that is a mistake people make, where they just expect someone to see you and say, oh, you must be good, let me do it. Well, it doesn't really, happen that way. You kind of have to put yourself out there, and not in a way of, being arrogant, but of raising your hand and saying, time out, I want to learn that. And really being honest and open with what you want, because it's my life and it's my career. And if I want something, I need to seek that out. I
Right.
can't wait for someone to, come and take me along. Eventually those people come, but you have to, and knowing going in, look, I am a female and I have, starting out in kitchens, there was not many females. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had to do something that set myself apart, because although I've been very fortunate in my career not to have any sort of major, anything major from that perspective that got in the way, but I knew that I had to basically keep up with the boys and outdo them, because it was just assumed that I wasn't going to be able to. So unless I was in pastry.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of had to do that. But I think sports kind of helped me with that. You
Yep.
have to have that competitive edge. You have to be the one that's trying harder, and you can't wait for the rest of your team to push you to be that. You just have to have that inside of you to do it. So
Yeah, I was gonna
so
say
yeah,
cross country helped, right? Because you got to keep that
yeah,
strong
it's
mentality and then make
right,
your
right,
move
right.
when you're
Yeah.
ready.
And setting goals, I think that's helpful, but I always had set goals. I remember when I was in culinary school, day one, they asked to write down a year, 5-year, and 10-year goal. And they said, you will keep these goals because you're writing them down today. And my 1-year goal was to work at a luxury hotel.
All right, check.
My 5-year goal was to be a supervisor in a kitchen, and I
Got
checked
it.
that off. And my
Mm-hmm.
10-year goal was to be an executive chef. And on the 8th year, I checked that off.
And that's
So
what I'm excited. So I want to continue on this journey. So you do 6
yeah,
years. You're developing over at the
yeah,
Arizona Biltmore, which is a
mhm,
beautiful hotel. I've
yeah,
had some friends work there,
yeah.
and they always rave about it. And so then you continue to make some moves. So you get to sous chef there, and then you have an
Mhm.
opportunity to make a move. How does that come up?
So the move to North Carolina came up through this process. I got married.
Okay.
Met my husband at work, and we decided to.
Well, you meet your husband at work?
I met my husband at work. Yes.
All right. What position was your husband?
He was on his externship, so we were kind of the same.
Nice.
Started around the same time. So he came from a school in Pittsburgh. So so we ended up dating, got married, and decided, we want to move to North Carolina. We loved that part of the country. He was living in before he moved in Virginia. So we settled on Asheville, North Carolina. If you've ever been there, you'll know why. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And really the Biltmore Estate was something that I had been to in the past, but just the type of environment that was really spoke to me of having, it's 8,000 acres. It's, this working estate, this beautiful property, to be able to do things that I wasn't able to do at the Arizona Biltmore. So we packed up, we moved to the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina. I applied just as, I was like, restaurant chef at this point. So I actually got a call back from someone that I had worked with at the Arizona Biltmore. He was a restaurant chef that I had worked for a part-time, and he had left and moved on to Florida. So I had no idea that he was at the Biltmore Estate. Mm-hmm. He is the one that called me when he saw my name, and he was like, "What are you doing? Why are you in North Carolina?" Yeah. So, I learned right there, it's, not what you can do, but it's also who you know, right? So I left a pretty good impression with him when I worked for him briefly. And, he was more than excited to see my name come across and knew exactly what I could do, and gave me a position. Well, didn't really give me, but offered a position based on, that was probably a bit of a stretch at the time. But he was the executive chef at the Arizona Biltmore Estate. His name is Rick Boyer. But he was like, I need a number 2. I think it's going to be you. And so.
Yeah, he trusted you.
He trusted me. And, it was something where I had to trust myself enough to know how to do it. So, but yeah, I was there. I was at that property for about a year and a half, and then moved, or at that hotel. And then I moved to the other side of the estate. It's kind of broken into 2 areas, and took over the other side of the estate. So the Biltmore House, gardens, all of that as executive chef.
That's amazing. So I want to rewind on something. I want to rewind because I have 2 questions. One, are these 2 Biltmores related, the Arizona and the New York? Or
they are not. So the original Biltmore Estate is in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah. Yes.
Arizona Biltmore, Biltmore is sort of indicative of, something fancy.
Okay. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't just like, oh, we went internal, because that was
no.
Perfect. So you get there, and like you said, it does matter who you know in this industry. Yeah. So you can never burn bridges. And I always tell that to people coming up, because you never know who's going to talk about you in this industry. And you had a mentor or, someone you work with come say, hey, come work with me. And like you said, that's a stretch to make that jump, right? To become the executive sous chef. Yeah. So what was that like when you got there? Was like, oh man, I really have to pick up the pace and learn things? Or was he teaching you? What was that like for you?
He was teaching me along the way, but I think too, some of it was, trial by fire. I think the best way that sometimes people learn is, they have to navigate things themselves. Obviously there's a protective bubble there, but for me, he knew me well enough to say, I know what she can do, and I know what she can be. So I'm going to let her do those things and guide as I need. But knowing that I had to catch up, and know that I had to, sort of fake it till I made it kind of thing. It gave me a drive to just do more, and it gave me confidence where maybe certain areas I wasn't as confident in. So, because I had to be, right? There was no choice. At that point, I had to be. I had him trusting me. I had a team of people looking for guidance. And it was something where, I look back now, and I think, I probably made some silly mistakes and some things, but it's okay. I had a mentor that was there, and he's been a mentor even now. It's 20 some odd years later, but he's a type of person that will tell you what you don't want to hear, but when you need to hear it, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think that's invaluable, having someone who is going to tell you straight what not to do, but also tell you when you're doing something right, but I don't want someone telling me I'm great all day long, right? Because it's probably not true, right? There might be great times, but I also want someone that's going to, have my back when I need it. And I think any chef coming up or, developing into a chef has to have a mentor. And when you become a chef, needs to be a mentor. I mean, those are two things that are so crucial, I think, in any sort of industry. But I think as a chef, because you need someone to be able to bounce ideas off of, but you also need someone to tell you, hey, stop, redirect, kind of you're going down the wrong path thing. So, and trust what they say. That's a big thing. Because
I think that's great advice for anyone coming up. Rewind that last 30 seconds. That's great advice from you, chef. And so this is where I want to kind of focus on, because this is a big step. You said it was a goal of yours, right? A 10-year goal, 8-year goal. You become executive chef at the famous and iconic Biltmore Estate. Mm-hmm. What was that like for you when you got that title? Did it like sink in, or was just another day because you'd been working there already?
It did sink in. I think it was something where, there's a sense of pride that comes in when you have, I remember when the first time I got my name on my jacket, like you never forget that point in your career. So like that to me is something that's very impactful. And I think whenever I can, promote someone and they get their name on their coat, like to me, it's a big deal. And I want to make it a big deal because it means something.
So explain that to someone who may not know the kitchen. When do they get their name on the jacket?
So typically you get it when you become, a sous chef or higher, where, the embroidery of your name is like solidifies that like you kind of have made it, it's like getting the last name on a name tag, right? Everyone knows the first name, but once you have that last name on there, it means something, right? So, but really having the title of executive chef, it meant more than just like, I'm running the operation and I'm in charge of it. It really meant like all the hard work that I put in, and that along the way, people have trusted me and people have, I've been able to guide others. So it was less about what I've done and more about what I've done for others and what, how I've been able to, make others grow and mentor others. And so it was just kind of a culmination of like, I'm not done, certainly, but all that hard work and all that time away from family and friends and things, it was worth it. It meant something. And I wasn't going to take that for granted. Like someone was giving me an opportunity that not a lot of people get, and especially at a property like that, I mean, it was the first, I hate to use the same female, but I was the first female chef they've had. I was the first, person from outside of that area, which is a big thing.
Big, yeah.
First one that was certainly my age. And it was something where it was less about those things and more about just, I was willing to put in the work. I was willing to do whatever it took, but also I loved what I was doing. And it showed in the work. It showed in the people. It was like, I mean, you can't go to that property and not love it.
No, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful and it's iconic, and it's being a part of that legacy, I think is so special. And it's something that I will never, ever, ever forget. When you walk out and you're like, every day you see the house and you're like, someone lived here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Family that lived here. Yeah.
I went when I was little. So I remember as like a 9 or 10-year-old, like, wow, this place is crazy. And then I just took my kids there a year ago. And so they're little kids. So I'm like, man, this is generations and generations of people walking through this place. So when it was closed, did you get to like walk around the house, or is that like strictly?
Yeah. I mean, we did some really fun events in the house. Obviously they don't do a lot of things inside the house, but we've done some special events inside the house. Served a lot of notable people. So there was some kind of behind the scenes things that we were, able to do a special dinner in the middle of this field with original china, and recreated one of the original Thanksgiving dinners.
So cool.
From the, early 1900s, just being able to be a part of that legacy of looking at it and saying, for, over 100 years, of someone working here, like I get the, it was like an honor to be able to use the china that was hand painted by, that was one of a kind. You can't put a price on that,
Yeah, I'm sure stewarding was freaking out that day, I'm sure.
Yes, we had a lot of people, it's like when you wear fancy jewelry and they kind of watch you. It was the same thing. I'm like, please don't break it. Please don't break it. Yeah. But being able to do just really, cool things, and it took me out of my comfort zone a lot. And, which I think is important. It's, you never want to be like comfortable, it's okay to be like, competent, but comfortable sometimes makes you complacent, I think. So it was good to have a challenge every day.
No, that's cool. And working at a place like that with that title really puts like a stamp of approval on
Yeah.
you, on your
Yeah.
resume.
Yeah.
And so I could ask you 100 more questions about the Biltmore,
No,
but
you're
we have
good.
limited time here because I
Yeah.
really do enjoy it. So you decide to make some moves. Like you're an executive chef there, almost 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Get to do all these cool events. You're at an iconic place, and
Mm-hmm.
then you end up making a move. How does that start happening? What goes on in your?
So again, I'll go back to Rick Boyer since he's,
Oh, Rick, was
he's
Rick
my,
calling you
yeah.
again?
No, he's calling me again. So he, I think at that point it was like, we could live in Asheville for a long time, but I think my family at that point, we were itching for a little bit of a move. Maybe we were a little bit nomadic in our life. So, there was an opportunity to go to this small little town in Wisconsin and work at a pretty incredible property. Again, a very iconic, 5-star, 5-diamond resort sort of town. Like it's a little village in Kohler, Wisconsin, that was owned by Kohler company. So
Okay, I was gonna ask that my next question.
Yeah. So it was the original building was the original workers that were from the 1800s that worked in, that's where they lived in this little town. So this just really super cool, very unique situation. There's championship golf courses, multiple different smaller hotels, just on a level that was much different than the other two properties. So obviously Biltmore Estate was just grandiose in its size, but the offerings were, just certain parts of the property because otherwise
Right.
it's protected protected forest. So there it became sort of reconcepting restaurants and opening new things and just solidifying what was, at a level that was good, but how do you make a 5-star, 5-diamond property great and even better than what they knew they could be?
Mm-hmm.
So although taking a step back from a title, which, to me, title isn't always the driver of success.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
Right. I took it as I'm going to do things that are different than what I've done. Again, I'm going to keep building that toolbox. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to work with someone who has been a mentor of mine. I'm going to move to an area that's different. We're going to have a little bit slower pace of life, maybe. Not sure that happened, but we can always hope. But really just doing, some incredible things. So being a part of an organization that is not traditionally hospitality within Kohler, but an incredible company just in general and a really supportive, and you have access to things that no normal hotel would have access to just based on the type of company it is. And for me, going there was, equal parts wanting to, make great food and all these great offerings. But I saw it as a chance of, from a leadership perspective, learning how to be a better leader because they had an industry and a separate section that was just leadership. They would take their employees that, it's a multi-billion-dollar worldwide company.
Yeah.
So obviously what they're doing is working from a leadership perspective. So being able to go through different leadership courses and leadership development programs that they offered, which was not normal for the culinary team to do that. But I immediately signed up and I'm like, if I can do anything to improve my leadership skills, then I'm going to do it in a heartbeat. So going through Six Sigma, things like that, where
That's cool. I've never done that.
Well, most chefs wouldn't, but and it's difficult, but it was something that I found incredibly useful, and I still use some of the same principles today. So why not do it at one of the biggest companies that you could possibly do it with? So yeah, it was. Although we did some really cool things. But I
leadership
also
is what you learned there.
Yeah, I wanted to, we did some, just amazing things. But for me, it was what I take away was the leadership component of it, because that's something that you can't. You could go to 4-year degree at Cornell and learn great things. But if you can learn from leadership from these people that are doing it day in and day out, although it's a manufacturing mentality, but leadership is leadership. A good leader is a good leader. So,
Did you find
Yeah.
yourself, because I had that challenge coming up, especially when you come up quickly, like you came up pretty
Mhm.
quick.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself lacking in some of that and realizing it later on? Like, man, like I just need to tighten up a couple things or
I
other
don't know if
people
I was
kind of involved?
lacking in it. I think some of it was that I think I was probably harder on people than maybe I should be, because I
Were you
found
throwing
it.
plates at people,
I
chef?
wasn't throwing plates, but I think I found certain things easy. So I did, naively was like, oh, everyone should know how to do this. When in reality, that's not the case.
Mhm.
So I think for me, it became less about, what I know versus others. It's how do you teach those people to be great? How do you get the most out of them? And I think that is where chefs can go really awry, where it's not about them. It's never been about me. It's been about the people around me and how do I make them better, and how, because if they're not at the level that we need them to be, at the end of the day, I'm not the one in the kitchen cooking all the food every day. I'm not the one in the kitchen I'm not.
Yeah,
So
a lot of people don't know that.
right. And so, there's days that I love to be, and that's my escape now, but I'm not in there. So if I'm not guiding and showing and leading and, all these things, then they're never going to be where they need to be. So someone showed me, so I in turn have to do that. And I think anytime I can get, advice or see a different path or see best practices, all those things, like you would be, not wise to use those to your advantage. But yeah, I mean, seeking that out for me, was hugely important, and it was a game changer. I mean, it completely shifted my mentality of leadership.
I think
So
that's great.
for the
That's
better.
great that you
Yeah.
had that, because a lot of people don't have that chance and start
Yeah.
realizing it later on.
Yeah.
Now, I want to kind of go on your journey here, because you have a couple of stops before we
Mm-hmm.
want to fast forward to the Phoenician, because I want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. So
Okay.
talk to me how you made a couple of moves, because you've been now, like you said, a little bit nomadic, right? You went to
Mm-hmm.
a small town up north and you kind of head back home, it looks like. How did that
Mm-hmm.
start coming up?
So if Wisconsin is lovely, but we stayed 2 winters too long.
That's fair.
So it's pretty brutal in the wintertime there. So we did our what I felt was long enough time, but to be honest, the winters were just not,
You're an Arizona girl.
coming from Arizona,
I'm a
you,
Miami
you
guy.
think
Like, you go for a week.
you think
So,
50 degrees is cold, but when it's negative 50, you realize that's cold. So, coming back to Phoenix, I knew we wanted to come back to Arizona. So I had family and things still. And we were like, we want to be sort of in that same environment again. There's a lot more opportunity. Our kids at this point, we had 3 kids, boys are getting bigger. We can't just keep moving around. Right. So although we're staying at a good chunk of time at these places, we kind of needed to head back. So, I took a job with Hilton, and part of the sort of agreement was I would sort of oversee a property that was struggling. But with that gave me opportunity to travel with the company. So I didn't spend a lot of time at the property, because it didn't need a lot of my attention. It needed, a few things. But a lot of it was traveling and working at luxury hotels within the Hilton organization, and really helping them. So some of the Six Sigma things, some of the leadership components, that I had in the past have kind of guided me to now be an asset, where I could be called on if I was needed to come into a property and really just guide the chefs. It could be menu development, it could be looking at financials, it could be process improvement. So it's really saving them from maybe their own
mistakes
decision
that they
making at time, right? And so it was a great opportunity, and from a corporate Hilton perspective, there's a great team there, and they were really welcoming, and so it gave me an opportunity to do something different, and but it was a lot of travel.
I was gonna
So
say, you're a mom, you got young kids.
yeah, it was a lot
That
of
was tough.
travel. It was tough. So
Is that when Chef Mark
when
Erler's there too? So you're working with Chef
Chef Mark
Mark?
Earler, yeah, he's pretty great. So yeah,
Yeah.
he was there. Yeah, so to be able to do some of that was important. I think I needed to check that off my list of
Traveling chef. You gotta
yeah,
fix things
yeah,
and see what it's like corporate style.
yeah. But then I get another call from Rick Boyer.
And man,
He's always there for me. Yeah, so going to the Phoenician. again, it was something that for me was a no-brainer because it was an opportunity they were in the process of renovation, just starting renovations, massive renovation for that property. So it was opening up 5 new concepts, a la carte concepts.
Amazing.
It was, reconcepting the banquet program. Just really like if you could start a hotel from scratch again, that's the opportunity, what it was. And, not a lot of times does that come along. Mm-mm. And so for me, it became, I have an opportunity to do things that I haven't done on a massive scale, and also be with people that I had worked with before. Working again side by side with a mentor, I think is invaluable. And being at an iconic, high level, just amazing property was like no brainer. Like, yes, sign me up tomorrow. Yep. So made the move from Hilton to there, and gave myself, I'll be there 3 years, but I was there 7.
That was your longest place. Yeah,
that's my place. Yeah. I think too. The pandemic was there, so that kind of sprinkled in a little bit of things, but to lead a team at a property like that was, it's pretty special, and it's something where, I'm never going to pick like my favorite place ever, because that's like. Yeah, but I would say that's so far that was probably just because the type of things that I was able to do there, and the freedom that I had, I think is invaluable. And I think that's really having people around that trust you, and that, the autonomy to kind of do what was best. And that is sometimes you don't get at a sort of corporate resort setting, and in a big company like Marriott. But that's why I stayed with them, and that's why I'm still, with the company, because I think it's, it's just one of those things where when it works and it fits, and.
So what was it like for you? Because that's a mega resort, right? Mm-hmm. And you've worked at some big places, but this mm-hmm. was probably the biggest. Am I saying that right?
Sure. Yeah.
So what was that like for you when you have so many outlets, you have so many events going on, you're the executive sous chef mm-hmm. at that property. This is now hundreds of cooks that are going to be working for you, right? Yeah. What was that like? Because a lot of people don't realize when you're executive sous chef, sometimes you're in the kitchen, but if you are in the kitchen, that means something's probably going wrong, right? Or you just need extra hands at some point. So what was that like for you when you have that many people on the team?
Well, logistically, it's probably the hardest thing that I've done, just because it's, it's hard when people would ask what that job, what is your job? People are like, what do you do here? And I'm like, it's really hard to narrow down what it is. I always would say, like, I'm the extra, right? So I'm the one that makes sure it's all flowing and everyone's doing their job and all those things. But it becomes, if someone needs help, if a department is needing something, then I'm the first one that goes. But it's a lot of work. It's something where, I would come in at sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning and leave at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And it would be day in and day out, because it's just the nature of a property like that is so crucial to make sure nothing goes wrong. And I think, it's probably to the detriment of, myself at times, but I've always been the person that is just going to go, push. So I don't think that's necessarily probably the healthiest thing to do, mm-hmm. Physically or mentally, but that's what I've known, so it's hard to turn that off, and it's hard to not do that. So, but it takes what it takes at a property like that, and that's not for everyone.
Yep.
But the amount of things that, I learned, and the amount of opportunity and just exposure to different things, and it was like exponentially more than, the hours worked. Or, I think when my very last day there, I can't remember even the amount of steps, but they sort of quantified how many steps I took at that property. And it was like, silly. But crazy. However they figured it out, but when you have 250-acre property, it's pretty crazy. But it was more of, a labor of love, I guess. I really truly believed in the program. I believed in everything that they were doing. We have a great GM and great team of people, and 170 or so culinarians and stewards. And it's, again, logistically, it was a bit crazy trying to organize all of that. But but I liked that. I mean, I like that sort of level of pressure and action, and, you know, a
It's
slow
addicting too.
day. Yeah, for sure. For sure. You're right. I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
I miss that. As once people ask me, "What do you miss about hotels?" I miss that action, you know, you like everything could crumble at any moment, but everything we
Yeah.
planned is happening right now. We've got it in
Yeah.
motion. But you're doing a good job there because, like you said, Marriott, you're with Marriott at the Phoenician, and
Yeah.
now I want to talk about where you're at today. And so they
Mhm.
tap you on the shoulder, and they don't tap people like this to come to the Ritz Carlton that are not the top of the crop in their company. So
Right.
now you're executive chef, like we said, at the Ritz Carlton Bacara,
Mhm.
Santa Barbara. And
Mhm.
so, how does that happen? Because this is now just 2 months ago, not even.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell me about it.
So, you know, I had an opportunity this summer. The Phoenician was going under more renovation. So we had an opportunity this summer to travel. And, you know, this property specifically was looking for some additional help. And, you know, I said, look, who doesn't want to be in Santa Barbara in the summer, by the way? If I could escape the Phoenix heat, I will at any point in time. So, but no, coming out here knowing that this was, you know, this has always been a high level property since you know, when it was Bacara with Montage. I mean, when it was opened in 2000, you know, it's always been this really sort of gem of, you know, California and the West Coast, and iconic. So I was curious about it, you know, and I knew that they, at that point, were looking for an executive chef. And, you know, I could have left the Phoenician 10 times, you know, but it was never about leaving. It was about, you know, finding the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so I came out here and, this last summer to just help for a couple weeks. We had some other chefs that came with me, just to provide some support. And, you know, pretty immediately you can fall in love with the environment. And, you know, I mean, it's an amazing property in general, just where it's at, what it looks like, you know, you can kind of get lost in the allure of all of that. But I knew walking into the property that there was going to be opportunity, just based on some things that I, you know, quickly saw. And for me, it became, you know, this is what it was filling something inside me that I was missing at the Phoenician. Because I think at the Phoenician, I had, you know, kind of done a lot of work and was cruising on cruise control and, you know, was patting myself on the back, like, look where we became. And then I'm like, no, I need a project. So, but in a good way. And I think that seeing it and working with, you know, being in the environment, working with the chefs and the cooks and the leaders, it was something where it was just a natural fit. And it was like I had been here 10 years already. And, you know, being able to provide guidance and leadership and basic things that, you know, were needed was something that I find very easy and I like doing. And, you know, I think too, now my older two are in college. So it was less about, you know, having to have a home base. And my youngest one is in junior high. But, you know, I think we were at a point where, you know, Phoenix became, you know, not necessarily we had to be there, you know. So I called my husband and I said, what do you think? What are your thoughts of moving to California? He was like, I don't know, let me see. So, you know, I think just with talking to everyone and, you know, meeting with the GM and the leaders here and really understanding what they were looking for. And, you know, in just the conversations, it was like all the things that I love doing and all the things that I feel like I'm good at, you know, and I really can contribute at a high level, you know. So it became this like light bulb moment of like, why am I not here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is where I need to be. I found the spot. I found the place. I get on the phone. I call Rick Boyer. I call the GM and I say, hi, we need to have a conversation. So I think too, you know, just going back, when I went back to the Phoenician, after I was here for a few weeks, and, you know, I kind of missed it. I kind of missed being here. I missed the people. And I was like, I wonder, you know, it was one of those things where at that point I knew that it was the time. I knew that it was the place, you know, and given the opportunity, I was going to take it, you know. And going through the process, you know, the normal interview process and tastings and all those things, you know, it became, you know, pretty apparent that I was making the right decision. And, we were going to have, to be able to partner with the other leaders here was important. So
what do you get to work on now? So now you're there,
mm-hmm.
you're starting. Of course, we all don't change everything on day one. We kind of watch and listen and see what's going on.
Right.
What is something that you're excited about on your journey here?
Well, I think initially the first is rebuilding the culinary team. So, we have a new executive sous chef, we have a new banquet chef, we have some new cooks that are coming online. So I think, just stabilizing and building the team is crucial. And I mean, I've learned how important that is, and making sure that we have a good foundation first. I mean, that's kind of everything. You can change a menu, you can change lots of little things, but the infrastructure of it and sort of the foundation of everything is the most important. So that's kind of been the focus right now, is getting everyone sort of, on the same page and understanding the future goals and all those things that, maybe at one point in my career, as a, even a supervisor or sous chef, I wasn't a part of. I just executed the plan. And so now it's, again, coming up with the plan, but involving others and understanding, strengths and opportunities of the team. And, so menus are coming, but, sometimes menus are secondary to the other things because, we can stabilize or, tweak menus here and there, but making sure we have the right structure and the people and all those things in place first, kind of, those you have to have. I mean, those are the most important things, which maybe 20 years ago I didn't realize, but the people are what makes things happen, so
yes,
the people are the most important part of any organization. So.
I agree with you. And so that's probably the hardest part too, right? Because people don't realize it's not just about the food. It's now like, all right, what's your labor cost this month? What is your food cost this month, chef? Why did it go up 1 point? Where did it come from? And if you don't have the team to push, people don't realize it. But look, if you haven't seen this hotel, make sure to check it out. It is beautiful. I hadn't really dived into it at all until I knew I was going to talk to you. And it is somewhere I need to get. I need to get it on my list.
Being able to see the ocean every day is not a bad day.
It's very good.
It's a very good day. Yes.
I'm lucky here in Miami. I get to see it a lot. My office is right on the water, and I can't be anywhere landlocked. I start getting I feel like I'm trapped. But you're out there on the coast, so you got a lot of great things happening. I'm so excited for you, especially at this hotel. But if you were to go back to young Rebecca at Swenson's, okay, and get to whisper in her ear, what advice are you giving her as she's starting out her journey?
I think I would say probably listen more. I think, for a while there, I maybe didn't listen to some of the people that I should have listened to. And I had to find out the hard way, and I had to do some things the hard way. And hard work's not, I don't shy away from that, but I think listening to people that have done it, listening to their advice, listening to, what made them great or what makes them great, I think is important, and not thinking that you know how to do it and not thinking that you know everything. I mean, it's really, again, I don't know, listening. I would heed advice, I think, and but also maybe have a mentor sooner. I think waiting until I started, after culinary school, I think having any sort of mentor early is, invaluable.
I think that's great advice, and we touched on it here. You had one that you named a couple times.
I mean, he's a pretty great guy. So he's I mean, he will always be someone that's really important in my life, but I think too, he's probably more important just in, he probably doesn't realize how many people he's mentored really over the years. Cause he can be pretty tough, but he's definitely one of the best. So
we have to share this episode with him. And so if somebody, you have to share it with them. But if somebody wants to connect with you, they've been inspired by you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Really email is the best way. I'm not big in social media. I just don't have time. I don't know. Email. So Rebecca.Tillman@ritzcarlton.com.
All right. Vendors, don't start emailing her. Okay. This is for people that want to connect with her. Well, Chef Rebecca, I truly appreciate you spending this time with us. I'm very grateful that you did. You gave some great stories, some great advice. especially even things I'm learning every time I talk to somebody. I appreciate it. And for
Thank
listeners,
you.
if you found something of value in this, make sure to send this episode to somebody. I'm sure that they would love to hear Chef Rebecca and her story. And if you haven't yet, please make sure to subscribe and leave a rating here. Chef Rebecca did a great job. Leave a 5-star rating and let us know that you were listening. But Chef, I appreciate you spending this time with us. Very grateful.
Absolutely.
And hope to stay connected with you.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much.